One victim we haven't spoken about yet is the surrogate.
Oh my God.
What does she go through? What does it mean to come into a contract where I now have a right to some part of your body, I suppose?
I mean, so again,
legally,
you start looking at these stories, surrogacy gone wrong. Just type that in and you get nightmare scenarios. First of all, in this country, and then we can talk about in other countries where then the poor and disadvantaged are taken advantage of by rich, wealthy Westerners who then want to use them because they're a cheaper hire for surrogacy. We can talk about that in a moment. Yeah, there are people who might think they sign up for surrogacy thinking, I want to help people, right? Like I've had a baby and I know it's beautiful. So I want to help someone who can't have a baby. So that's often how surrogacy is presented. And even people who begin the process will talk about it. And then you have the surrogate, and these stories are out there. I'm not making this up. You can Google it. A surrogate who halfway through the pregnancy gets an ultrasound and they realize there's something genetically wrong with the baby. So then the biological parents say, we want you to have an abortion. Now the surrogate has been pregnant for 20 weeks and she knows she's giving the baby up at the end anyways. She doesn't want to have an abortion, but the couple who have a legal right to the child are saying you have to have an abortion. And if you go through the legal paperwork that she would have signed initially, it would have said, if, X, Y, and Z happens, yes, this couple can authorize an abortion. I even found an IVF clinic online that advertised its different payment structure. Like if you carry the baby to term, I think you got like at least $70,000 or something. But if a couple changes their mind, it's any duration in the pregnancy and wants an abortion, the surrogate is paid $10,000 to have the abortion. She's actually paid because she's not going to get the 70 grand. There's no baby at the end, but we'll at least incentivize you to have the abortion because we're going to give you 10. Like, this is the craziness. So then what happens to the surrogate who doesn't want the abortion? And then what happens to the surrogate who thinks, yeah, I'm just going to place the baby in the loving arms of a couple at the end of pregnancy? Sometimes there are rules that the surrogate can't even see or hold the baby. We're talking immediate. Like, I just think of the two babies I have had. As soon as they come out,
give it to me.
It is skin to skin. Like the umbilical cord is still attached, and they are literally they have been placed on my chest, beautiful. Right? And I cannot imagine that giving birth. God, it's so terrible. My God. And having someone take the baby before I can even see it. Or hold it. And then I will never see and never hold that baby.
And you think of the woman just laying there on the table. The baby's been taken and there she is. And
again, there's so many of these stories, people reveal them. As someone who's kind of has a researcher bent, like if I had the time, I'd love to just be a researcher and interview people and get more stories. But I'll never forget seeing online on YouTube, it's been all over the news, Paris Hilton has pursued IVF and created all kinds of embryos. There's this one video that made me I felt sick. I literally felt sick. All it showed was Paris and her husband waiting for the baby to be brought to them it was the nurse or the doctor, whoever, after their surrogate gave birth. And all the video shows is Paris, who has not been pregnant with this child, who has not had the bonds of pregnancy with this child, having this child put on her chest. And all I could think of was like,
there's a woman back there that no one cares about, who has to heal from this, who has to...
And then some people might say, so there are people who go through the experience and they feel like their heart has been ripped from them. And I know someone watching will say, no, like, it gave me joy. It gave me joy to sacrifice in this way. So there's always going to be the people that say that, right?
Who say that about abortion too.
Exactly. So you can lie to yourself. You can convince yourself of things. You can also be so self-interested that you say, I got my 70 grand, I got my money. But again, as you said, we can forgive each other, but nature doesn't forgive. There is going to be the natural hormonal connection that will have an impact. And then there are cases where there's these whole homes in like India where you've got, literally there was a documentary called House of Surrogates. But it's homes of surrogates in India. where rich Westerners will go because it's cheaper to get a surrogate overseas than in the United States.
God.
And these women leave their families because they're dirt poor and they so badly want their children to be educated and go to school. So they leave their own husband and children for 9 months because in order for the Westerners to be guaranteed that the babies gestated are going to be healthy and properly give nutrition and stuff, all the surrogates have to live in a home. And I've seen a video where literally it's just rows of Indian women laying on their backs, which also is someone who's been pregnant. Like there comes a point where you don't lay on your back anymore, right? They're just laying there, bellies out to here. And then in one documentary I watched, they were going to remove the babies via C-section. It was just kind of the norm to do C-section. Well, if you know anything about pregnancy and birth, like C-section, yes, a lot of people do it, but it is a surgery that comes with it complications, as well as the fact that you need to think about subsequent pregnancies, the proximity of your next pregnancy, how many more pregnancies you have. So how many poor women are just thinking, I will get money for the children I already have to go to school, but they live in a culture where it's normal to have a lot of children and they themselves might want more children. So they have a child now via C-section, their own children they deliver vaginally. They go home to their tiny shack and then they get pregnant really quickly, having not been with their husband, let's say, for the last 9 or 10 months. And then how soon after that, do they have good medical care? Now they're having is it a vaginal delivery after a C-section? Do they now have to pay, they're really poor, all the money they've made on getting a C-section? Are they going to need a C-section because they've already had I mean, there are so many things. Like, is anyone thinking about the next stage and like the possible implications? So again, it's layer upon layer of people, whether they consent or not, who are being taken advantage of. And some people are quote unquote consenting, but they don't really realize what they're consenting to. There's also, by the way, because if you're going to hire a surrogate, you want to be, and you're putting in way more money than just IVF because you're now hiring another person to gestate. You want to be sure that this person can handle a pregnancy.
Yeah.
So now there's this whole like online world of finding military wives who will be surrogates. Because who's a better candidate than someone whose husband's overseas but wants some extra income, but has other children to care for, so they want to be around for their kids. But the fact that they have other kids is proof that they can gestate pregnancies well. So they become perfect candidates to have babies for other people and to be surrogates. But then what happens when something goes wrong and your husband is overseas and your other children need your attention, but you now have a complicated pregnancy? Maybe you have preeclampsia. Maybe you have other things that have arisen. How will this impact your ability to gestate your own children with your husband when he returns because of something that went wrong with this pregnancy? What is the emotional toll on your children to see their mother pregnant with someone else's child? Like I said to my husband the other day, we were talking about this, and our daughter Violet is 3.5, really smart. I mean, every parent thinks their kid is smart, but she's really smart. She knows babies. She loves babies. And if I were to be pregnant as a surrogate, Violet would know as my belly grows that there's a baby in there. We would be talking about the baby. If I were to then not let her in any way be connected to that baby, because the rules of the surrogacy are I go give birth and I don't even see the baby, let alone my child who is bonded with this child in my womb. The toll on the other children around the pregnant woman who's the surrogate is huge. And people, I really think they're not thinking about it. And they might not even be thinking about it right away. But as time goes on, as you say, when we hit and we're starting to hit rock bottom, and these stories are coming out already, adoption takes a toll. You know, and this is another layer I talk about in here because some people say, well, I mean, adoption is caring for someone else's child. Sometimes someone might give birth and then call the adoptive parents to the hospital, and they're kind of doing the Paris Hilton thing, right? Where they're in the room. There's a profound difference. In the case of the adoption, the child already existed. And the mother, the biological mother, for whatever reason, thinks she can't meet the child's needs and chooses another couple to care for the child. But it's actually still a tragedy and needs to be acknowledged as such.
Yes.
And that there is a loss for every party involved.
Yes.
And that there also should not be an immediate taking away of the child, the biological mother, for a healthy adoption I believe, needs to hold and see that child and to some degree stay in touch. Even if, there needs to be a detachment in terms of like helping the child understand these, the adoptive parents are the ones raising you, to stay in touch, not this secrecy. Because then what happens when that child becomes 20? They now go on a pursuit for their biological parent if that had only, so even with adoption, we have to acknowledge that's not the way it should be. Adoption is a response to something that has gone wrong. The difference, though, between that and the surrogate is nothing has gone wrong before the surrogacy, before the IVF. There was no baby. Now we're creating the situation. And then all these layers of just fractured relationships, breaking up communion of persons, dividing and destroying.
Thanks very much for watching that clip. You can click the link below if you want to watch the full interview, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.